There you go.
And it depends on what color lipstick you're looking for at that point in time as to which pig you're going to like.
Right. And some of the stations are really good at throwing out some of the facts, just ignoring it, only focusing on the ones that support the position they've already taken.
It is fun to go to the gym, and on the bikes, there's about a dozen televisions all lined up over the exercise bicycles. And you sit there and you can see 4 different networks all giving the news at the same time in the afternoon or whenever you're there, talking about what pig they want to talk about,
right,
and putting the lipstick on it, and then having a debate on which color is the right lipstick to put on the pig.
Welcome to Peter and Phil's Courageous Conversations, a podcast addressing race relations and social issues in hopes that you'll be inspired to do the same. Now, let's begin our conversation with your hosts, Dr. Peter Weinstein and Dr. Philip Nelson.
Sharon and I were watching some TV last night, and we mute the commercials most of the time, but we mute them even more now because all of the political commercials do not tell you what great things the candidates have done. They tell you all of the bad things the opposition has done. And so instead of focusing on what I as an individual have accomplished, I'm spending more time telling people the weaknesses of other candidates. And this whole concept is not even focused on political activities, it's focused on personal activities. And so, I think COVID hasn't helped, but I really do think that the entire country and actually probably the world is hyper-reactive. I mean, there's a demyelinated nerve out there that just even the slightest thing, such as Biden's comment, becomes headline news in a world where there's a lot more important things to be focusing on than a statement that's made that probably was a misstatement. I mean, we are just in such a hyper-reactive state, and it's not getting any better from what I can tell.
And let me say that just as we're talking about a small sliver of the MAGA supporters who truly are promoting violence, we don't know how many people actually care about what Biden said. All we know is that some political press office took advantage of it and promoted it and said and countered it. And now we're promoting it again. This is the problem with social media. It exaggerates. That's why nobody really trusts the polls right now, because they got the last election so wrong. There is no trustworthy source of good data. And that's why you keep getting these counter responses to our presentations, because people have decided that the mass media is lying. And, as if the media that they're listening to isn't. So sometimes I have to check myself too. I love what you said. There are much more important issues here rather than what somebody said. And the fact that that's what we're focusing on, we're focusing on how people phrase things rather than the issue itself. And oh, by the way, even the politicians that are talking about how the great things that they did are misleading.
We've talked about this in the past, but one of the things that's come out in some of the conversations that we've had since Portland was, what's real news?
Yes.
What happens with a statement or a misstatement or an exaggerated statement is it becomes the news.
Whose fault is that?
Well, it's everybody's fault, because we've allowed news to become commercialized.
I disagree with you. I don't think it becomes the news. I think it becomes part of the conversation. It becomes, I don't want to say gossip, but see, this is why the press gets blamed for so much, right? We have an enterprise in TV, and it's the public that can't separate the difference. When I see a political campaign, a political commercial, I should know that's a political commercial. And no matter how well it's funded, no matter how well it's directed, no matter how well the actors or the politician is presented, I should still know that there's an agenda that I should question. But when I take that information into my conversations without testing it, without verifying it, without checking it, then it becomes news because I'm spreading it. And if nobody checks me.
So my question about news, though, and going back to news in the 60s and 70s and news now, is how can the same information, facts, tangible facts, be presented in the same way by two different individuals and then try to figure out what really is the fact? What really is the quote unquote news? Because we used to get just the facts, ma'am. Now it's the story of the news, not the news itself, that we're getting. And much of what is interpreted or interpolated from that quote unquote fact then directs us politically one way or the other. I think we have a huge issue, but I think much of what has exacerbated the issue is the fact that we really can't get real factual news. I'm not saying we're getting fake news, but I am saying that we are being influenced by influencers, social media as well, and directing us in one direction or another. It's up to us, human beings, to be able to think through, identify the facts, and make decisions. And it's getting harder and harder to do that.
I'm giving silence because I want our listeners to have a chance to think about what you just asked. And I want it to sink in, because maybe I'm giving the silence because I don't have an answer. But what I want to do is reinforce the size and complexity of this problem. First of all, I believe that your original premise, to be very frank, was a poor one. If you had two people giving the same facts in the same way, then there's no different story. However, let's start there, because I'm sure that you have found in your years of professionalism and administration, and now we don't have to talk about politics at all. Whenever a decision is being made and we try to pull all the facts together, let's say it's about buying a car. Which car are you going to buy? Is it going to be electric, gas, or diesel? American or foreign? And, if it's American, which way would you go? All these factors come into play. And the facts are the facts. I mean, this engine can get to 0 to 60 in 30 seconds, and this one takes 2 minutes. This one's tires never run flat. This one doesn't need oil, whatever. The point, though, is that even when you have hard facts that are irrefutable, you have different priorities for each of those facts. And so they add up differently in each individual. So that's the first thing you have to understand, that even if you had your perfect world where you got perfect facts and you could trust the facts, we would still have differences because we would prioritize our facts differently. Sometimes when I've had to make decisions or the college has had to make decisions about purchasing a vehicle, or whether it's going to invest in a piece of medical equipment, or whether it's going to expand the classroom. And the fact is, we know we need the vehicle, or we need the classroom, or we need this. That's not the problem. The problem is, how much are we willing to spend for it? And if we spend a certain amount of money, will it mean that we might not be able to get something else? So now we're trying to prioritize this classroom against something else. And some people want the classroom, the people who need the classroom want it more than the people who want the vehicle. And the people who want the vehicle want a particular vehicle that prevents the people who want the classroom from getting the size classroom they need. You know, and it's those kind of decisions that we end up. And so then what we do in politics is, in order to get the money we want to buy the vehicle we want, we lie about the need for the classroom, or we exaggerate the need for the vehicle. That's what we're doing here. And it's those kind of nuances that we have refined to a razor edge. And then we complicated it with social media, with mass media. And the people who can present that story the best are the ones who win. And all of a sudden we think the facts have been lost. The facts are not lost. They're in there. The facts have just been twisted or buried or overtly exaggerated to fit an agenda, to fit a need, and it's very complicated. You and I have had several discussions about the simplicity of the 3-network approach we had in TV back, in the 50s and 60s. On the other hand, that's kind of how we got into the Vietnam War too, because we didn't have the robust investigative nature of the press to be able to discern quickly whether we were winning or not. And we were hoodwinked for a while. And then we didn't have the robust nature to be able to share that information with the country. Now we have that robustness. What we don't have now are the safeguards to make sure that what we get is truth.
Well, I thought I had you hoodwinked before when you were quiet, but now I understand where you were coming from. So let me put it in very simple terms. All the news stations get the same pig. They all just put different color lipstick on it.
There you go.
And it depends on what color lipstick you're looking for at that point in time as to which pig you're going to like.
Right. And some of the stations are really good at throwing out some of the facts, just ignoring it, only focusing on the ones that support the position they've already taken.
It is fun to go to the gym, and on the bikes, there's about a dozen televisions all lined up over the exercise bicycles. And you sit there and you can see 4 different networks all giving the news at the same time in the afternoon or whenever you're there, talking about what pig they want to talk about. Right. And putting the lipstick on it, and then having a debate on which color is the right lipstick to put on the pig.
Today, I was watching a panel discussion on a channel, and one of the pundits was predicting that there's no way Biden's going to be a candidate for president, in the next election because of his age, that he's obviously struggling. And then underneath it, there was a byline that said that America was horrified at the long pause in a recent interview of Biden. A long pause in response to a question of inferring that he's suffering from some mental debilitation, just like Reagan.
I had the same concern when you were paused before. Just, it's okay. I just said I'd let you know.
Yeah, well, that's my point, man. But my point is, it goes back to your point again. We're not talking about Biden's performance on the Ukraine. We're not talking about Biden's performance on getting a bipartisan infrastructure bill passed. We're talking about him taking a breath while he's thinking about how to answer a question, and how long did it take him to do it. We're not even talking about the answer to the question or the question. We're talking about how long it took him to prepare the answer. It is the attack on character that we have devolved to. rather than the promotion of issues.
That's a great summarization of what we started with a little while ago when you started to talk about woke and the pastor that you heard.
Yeah.
And so you just brought it full circle, unintentionally, I think. But you brought it full circle in the sense that it's not about anything more than taking that information and molding it into the messaging that you want. Really, you know what, this is all, the whole conversation is all about messaging, isn't it?
Yes.
Which is marketing.
Which is marketing.
And so really what we've talked about for the last few minutes is really that we are in the middle of a great big marketing campaign at all levels: religion, politics, sex, drugs, rock and roll. We are the audience for this huge marketing campaign.
And unfortunately, we think politics is as important as music, rock and roll, and the other issues that we benefit marketing from. And you know why? It's because the biggest bucket of money is in government. So once again, it's about power sharing. Of course, marketing is the key here. That's why idioms are so important. That's why phraseology is so important. But in the process, we lose sight of what's important.
And the ultimate goal of marketing is to get somebody to know, like, and trust you. And so they do a pretty good job of know, maybe sometimes a little bit of like, but man, right now, marketing is not doing a really good job of building trust.
Well, I disagree. I think they're doing a very good job of building trust in their demarcated, in their targeted arenas.
Okay.
And that is also a function of marketing. Marketeers know they can't be all things to all people. So they carve out the people that they can convince to buy a Super Sudzer. And then they carve out another group that's going to buy the chamois white. And then they carve out another group that's likely to believe that these other people are taking their jobs away. And they give them what they want and then try to push them to the next product. And that's why I keep asking, whose fault is that? You know, when I was visiting my granddaughters last night, my youngest brought her grades to me. She said, "You want to see my state scores?" I said, "Yeah, let me see them." And she did very well. She showed me her science scores. And then there's a state average for Louisiana. And then she showed me her English scores, and there's a state average. And then she showed me her social studies scores, and there's a state average. The social studies average score in Louisiana for elementary students was horrible compared to the other average scores. We're doing great in STEM, but now when we start talking about, when the Democrats keep talking about how the Republican Party strategy is going to destroy democracy, well, I don't know if this is part of the strategy or not, but I can't think of a better way of doing it than not teaching our children about democracy.
One of our very earliest conversations, you talked about civics.
Yep.
And I think you just brought that point home.
Yep.
Probably is an entire podcast just talking about civics and history and government and the the different parts of government on a state level and a local level, and as well as a national level. Maybe we need to give a civics lesson to our readers, listeners as well, and probably need to thank, from a marketing standpoint, Nationwide for helping us to put this program together. And we need to think about how we want to market this to a larger audience down the road, so more and more people can have courageous conversations. But I do think that you just pointed out the need for a greater civics lesson. I look forward to being your student when you teach me, Yoda, all about civics.
Yeah, I don't know when I became the teacher, but okay, I thought this was a conversation.
Well, it'll be a conversation because good teachers ask good questions and their students have to be able to respond, right?
Yeah, well, that's good. So do colleagues. As I said, we're learning together. But anyway, I've enjoyed the conversation this morning.
Yeah, no, I had no clue where we were headed, and we got there. We hadn't programmed our GPS this morning. We just got in the car and started driving.
Yeah, we did.
Which is pretty good when the person that you're driving with, keeps you between the lane lines, and every once in a while says, "Get off here." So, well, thank you, Dr. Nelson.
Thank you, Dr. Meinstein, and thanks to Nationwide for supporting this podcast, and thank you to the listeners as well.
Yeah, you'll be getting part of our new season. This will be a part of our new season. So help us direct our conversations. We'd love to hear what you would love to hear and be a part of. We're looking forward to having more guests coming up as well, and continuing our courageous conversations in a world that needs more of courageous conversations.
Thank you for joining us for another Courageous Conversation. Be sure to follow us and check back next week for more.